Welcome to Beyond the Goal, a TCT production. I'm your host, Coach Mike Gottfried, and our guest today, and you're sitting out there today, you're going to watch and you're going to learn a little bit about the United States Sports Academy. Now you could say, well, how does that affect me? You know, if you wanted to coach, and when I was coaching football at Kansas or Pittsburgh or Cincinnati or Murray State, I always would run into businessmen or lawyers and doctors, and they said, I would like to be a coach. Well, you had that opportunity today when you learn about the United States Sports Academy. TJ Rosandich, the president of the United States Sports Academy, is our guest. TJ, it's great to have you here. And now we want to go to see a clip about the United States Sports Academy. TJ, we're going to learn about the Sports Academy here. But before we start this, your dad, Tom Rosandich, is a good friend of mine, and I've known him for years, and I respect him, and he has done what no other man has done, creating this Sports Academy. But I want to talk first about, you were in the Mideast and you lived in Saudi Arabia, grew up Catholic, right?
Right, that is correct.
Tell us about that.
Well, actually, back in 1985, I was in the employ of the Academy, and I was asked to go to Saudi Arabia and assume management of our projects there. At the time, we had almost 500 people working for us doing physical, fitness, sport, and recreation programming for various members or entities in the Saudi military and for organizations like their central sport organization, Youth Welfare. I wound up staying 9 years. But one of the things about that is, first of all, it taught me that sport is truly a universal language. But I also learned that you had to adapt. For example, during Ramadan, we had to shift all of our programming and everything into the evenings because of fasting and what have you. Very honestly, it was probably tougher on my family. You know, Saudi Arabia is a tough place to work. Anyone who's been there would tell you that. But for my family, we were not allowed to practice our religion. No Christian tracts or anything like that were allowed into the country. And when we finally did move back to the United States, I said, we got time to make up, so I sent my kids to parochial school.
Good.
They went first to Christ the King Elementary for the youngest one, and the eldest one went to McGill-Tulin Catholic High School in Mobile.
Good. I love your dad. Your dad, let me tell you what I love about this man, because he knew there was something about sport and coaching and tying the world together. But nobody gave him a blueprint of how to do this. He had to figure out, He had to have a great vision. And talk about his vision for the sports academy.
Well, actually, the academy, which he founded in 1972 as the only freestanding sport institution in the United States, was the culmination of his life to that point. He began as a three-letter athlete at University of Wisconsin lacrosse. He was a world-class hurdler. That career came to an end by a Chinese hand grenade in the Korean War. But as a Marine officer, he founded the Marine Corps Relays. He coached world-class athletes, Bob Mathias, the Olympic
Great
champion, and congressman. When, sports gives you that kind of grounding for bigger and better things. Wes Santee. He was running neck and neck, no pun intended, with Roger Bannister to break the 4-minute mile. Al Cantello, the long-serving track coach at the Naval Academy, was a world record holder in the javelin. Those athletes were all a part of the U.S. Olympic team to the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne, and he was the all-service coach that was a part of the U.S. Olympic delegation that did travel to Australia for the Games. After that time, he was asked by the U.S. State Department to serve as a goodwill ambassador.
Who was the president then?
In 1956?
Yeah.
Oh boy, here's a history quiz. That would have been Eisenhower?
I should know that.
Yeah, right, Eisenhower. Anyway, he went abroad and coached in some 40 countries, largely in Southeast Asia, representing the United States as a goodwill ambassador for sport. And there was a couple of seminal events there. One was rather humorous, but the other one really showed him that there was a need to address teaching sport in a more formalized way than was actually occurring in the United States at the time. When he went to Laos, the Kingdom of Laos, he arrived in Vientiane. I'm here from the State Department. Where's the track team? I want to get going. Gee, we don't have a track team. He says, okay. So the person in charge, he was the appointed minister, called the army. They took him over to a military camp, marched out a battalion of paratroopers and said, there's your track team. No facilities, so actually my father fanned out through the city, and him and his paratroopers basically stole anything that wasn't nailed down. He got the name Rosandich and the 400 Thieves, but they stole the graders.
But they had a track team.
Yeah, but they wound up with a track. And but one of the funny parts to that was that the USAID program at the time sent hundreds of pairs of long underwear to tropical Laos. My father saw them, grabbed them, and says, these are your sweatsuits. The inaugural track meet, first ever in Laos, the U.S. ambassador was there, high-ranking ministers from the Laotian government, and he marched his 400 paratroopers by them all in long underwear, gifted the U.S. government.
See, he was always thinking. Now, his parents were immigrants.
Right.
Do you think that played any part in his love to go out in the world, to tie the world together?
Well, I don't know so much that, but it certainly taught him discipline. When my grandfather arrived in the United States at the turn of the last century, like millions of other European immigrants, he came through Ellis Island. In fact, my father was recognized by the Ellis Island Foundation. It's called NICO, and was inducted into that particular Hall of Fame. But he really understood that sport is a universal language.
Right.
The whole foundation of the Olympic movement is all about, there ought to be a time when we can set aside our differences and compete person against person, on the field of competition. It's in a way very unfortunate politicization of international sport, but ultimately it has so much to contribute. But getting back to really the foundation of the academy, he went to Indonesia in the early 60s to take over the coaching of the Indonesian national track and field team.
He was their coach.
Yes, he was their coach, but the minister of sport at the time, his name was Maladi, was impressed with his drive and his ability to do programming and the sheer ability to do things like start a school of sport for Indonesian administrators and athletes so that they could become coaches. He understood that ultimately the only way that a nation will ever be successful in sports is when they can do it themselves.
Right. He figured out in the 70s, in the 80s, that he had to tie the United States together with Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, but he had to make all those ties himself.
Yeah. Actually, he had to begin at home. If you think back over the history of sport in this country, one of the things that he learned in Indonesia, he was working very closely with coaches from the Eastern Bloc. What I mean the Eastern Bloc are the communist countries of Russia, East Germany, Czechoslovakia.
So he traveled over there.
Yes. In fact, we were the last Americans out of the country in Indonesia when the communist coup occurred there. The ambassador was on the same plane and the city was on fire. And the reason that was because my father was traveling behind the Iron Curtain with the Indonesian national team when the fighting broke out. But what he learned was that there was far more to coaching than what was happening in America. In America, it was kind of like an old boy way of, I worked under this coach and I learned how to coach from him. What my father learned from the Eastern Bloc countries is that there are fundamental principles of conditioning. There's aspects of sports psychology and sport medicine that was being overlooked, within our country. 1972 was a very, very important year, not only because it was for the foundation of the United States Sports Academy, but also for sport in America. 1972, the United States Olympic team had a dismal showing. For the first time, the U.S. basketball team lost the Olympic gold to the Russians, and that's because the coach didn't understand the international rules of basketball. They're different internationally than collegiate or the pros or what have you. The U.S. track coach missed the starting time for the 100-meter final, and so the Americans favored to win the 100 meters weren't even at the race because he couldn't read a 24-hour clock. There was also franchise fights going on within the sports structures of America. The NCAA and the AAU were fighting over whether an athlete could compete. For the U.S. track team, they would lose their scholarship. Out of all of this came the President's Commission on Amateur Sport. It was clear that sport had gone off the rails in the United States. And so the President's Commission took a look at the question, and it all culminated in the Amateur Sports Act in 1978 that basically set out the rules and the role for the U.S. Olympic Committee and how they can franchise the national governing bodies and what have you. But my father understood that the true answer to rectify the issues of sport in the United States had to go to education.
Yeah. Your dad, again, a trailblazer, he figured out how to add and marry sport and art.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. You're right. One of the truly unique things about him as a visionary is that he could see seemingly unrelated things. Think about sport and art. I mean, how is that related? But he fundamentally understood that there was a relationship, that a society, a group of people are known not only by the culture, the art that they create, be it music or sculpture, but also by the games that they play. Think about how American football, fast-paced, some would say violent, really personifies American culture, as opposed to many other nations in the world where the version of football is what we call soccer. You know, if you have physical contact, you get a yellow flag, and if it's bad enough, you're tossed off with a red flag. So you see, it is a reflection, you know, of culture. Think about sports such as gymnastics with the floor exercise, synchronized swimming, ice skating, figure skating. That all embodies elements of dance and music. And on the other side, sculpture, painting. It all is about capturing the human spirit and the fluidity and the movement, human movement. And so out of this, he founded the American Sport Art Museum and Archive, which has grown to be more than 1,700 pieces in all media. We have put this out as a museum. It's open to the public free of charge as a public service, really as an educational outreach on our part. Anyone can walk through the door on our campus 9 to 4, Monday to Friday, and take it all in. And it is truly a unique embodiment. In fact, we just got the complete poster set from the Rio Summer Olympics. You know, every Olympiad they do posters, and so we just got the Rio ones in. So you have to come on by and see them.
I will. Your dad is going to be honored by the Mobile Sports Hall of Fame, long overdue, and I think nationally he's been honored a bunch. I want to ask you this for the viewers. They're sitting there right now saying, okay, I want to know more about the Sports Academy, because Mike Leach was a lawyer, and he was enjoying his law field, and he saw something about the United States Sports Academy, and he said, you know, I always wanted to coach, and I'm going to go to this academy, get my degree, and I'm going to switch from lawyering to coaching. So somebody may be out there, how do I get involved in U.S. Academy? How do I get enrolled? Do I have to go there to take the classes? Talk about that.
Well, actually, the Academy is the only regionally accredited sport university in the United States. All we teach is sport. Because of that, our bachelor's program is unique. It's an upper division program because we don't teach the general education core, things like algebra and the history of Western civilization. People can pick that up in local community colleges or what have you. We focus on the junior and senior years. We have a master's degree program and a doctoral degree program in sport management. So depending upon your educational background, you could come in at any of those 3 degree levels. The disciplines are also sport specific with sport management, sport coaching, exercise science, recreation management, sports studies.
Can I go to school online?
Absolutely. The Academy has always been an early adopter of technology. In fact, in the 80s, I was pursuing my master's degree from the Academy in Saudi Arabia, and so I was able to do that without giving up my job. A funny story, we had a naval officer who got his master's degree as a submariner, and he took his entire degree underwater on a nuclear submarine, which was an interesting sort of a thing. But we have our degree programs through the doctoral that can be delivered entirely online. And because we're so adept at this, we became a part of the U.S. Department of Education's Distance Learning Demonstration Project. Out of the 7,000 plus universities and colleges in the United States. There were only some 30 of us that were selected by the Department of Education to demonstrate to the higher education community and the Congress the effectiveness of online and distance education. We've realized the full potential of online education because we operate in a rolling registration environment.
Okay, so if I'm on my couch right now, I'm sitting at home, I may be in Canada or Ohio or Pennsylvania or Washington, D.C. How much is it going to cost me to enroll? And how many graduates have you gone through?
Okay. The tuition obviously varies from bachelor's to doctoral. You pay more for a doctoral degree than the bachelor's. And we also recognize the contributions and the sacrifices of our serving military, so we specifically discount tuition for them as well.
That is great. So if you're a military person, man or woman, that you came back and you can enroll them, and you get a break.
Yeah. And for active duty, absolutely. And of course, there's the VA. As an educational institution, we have a full array of financial aid options available as well. So to me, financing would not be a reason, not to go to school or to pursue your dreams. The biggest thing is that the complete flexibility of our programs. It's asynchronous, which means that you can study when you have the time to study. You don't have to log on to talk to a professor at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you're a homemaker, after the kids go to bed, so you can go online and pursue your studies. Basketball coach at Auburn recently completed his degree with us, and I noticed or heard from the dean that he would typically submit his assignments at 2 in the morning.
Yes. After his film.
After his filming was done and prepping for the next day and whatever. So I guess practice was in the afternoon. But with this, the other part.
I want to stop you right there, because that's important what you just said. I believe the guy is Chuck Person.
Right.
And but Chuck, who was working on his degree, and he's coaching at Auburn, so he gets his position, but he needs this degree.
Yes, absolutely.
So he got it through you.
Right, absolutely.
And Greg McDermott,
yes,
Creighton coach,
right,
who's in the top 20, he came to you.
Sure.
So you can coach. You can come here and you can go to the United States Sports Academy, and you know, sometimes God puts things on our heart, and you have dreams, and but there's barriers, but you got to get around the barrier, and somehow you and Tom Rosandich and TJ have figured a way for you to go to the United States Sports Academy. If your love is to teach and coach, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just for coaching. Administrators. We've had athletic directors, say at the University of Texas, the associate athletic director for women's programs, general managers with NBA teams.
Wow.
And in sport promotion companies like Learfield Sports, which is a major.
You have connections with them?
Well, the biggest part to that is what we call our mentorship program. In our bachelor's degree, the capstone is that the students need to go out and do an expanded internship. We call it a mentorship. We want them to apply in the field what they have learned in the classroom. And through this, that's how you really begin to put together connections in the profession. And an awful lot of our students, last time in our exit surveys that I checked, more than a third of the students that do that mentorship get an offer from their hosting organization to come work for them. The number would probably be higher, but an awful lot of our students are already working professionals, like a Chuck Person. You know, he already had a job, a very good job. So the mentorship as a route for a job offer for him wouldn't necessarily apply. But for an awful lot of people it is. But the biggest thing is, for us, it's a very important endorsement of what we're doing, because we always ask the mentor. They have to complete a survey as well. How well prepared was the student? Did he bring the requisite skills to the table? Would you host another one of our students in a similar situation? And almost invariably, the answer is a resounding yes, and we find that very gratifying.
I'm a big supporter of the United States Sports Academy because I think it really fills the bill and helps people go into sport, or like you said, with Learfield and general managers of pro and working your way up. And if I was young again, I'd be over there trying to get my degree. We're closing down here. I want to say this, these programs, it's an opportunity that TCT has brought Dr. T.J. Rosandich from the United States Sports Academy to speak and support TCT. Call them, write them. Here's how you get a hold of them. TCT, P.O. Box 1010, Marion, Illinois 62959 in Canada. TCT, P.O. Box 1220, Fort Erie, Ontario, L2A5Y2. And if you want prayer, as somebody is always in the prayer room, they'll take your calls, 800-232-9855. TJ, we only have about 30 seconds. Give them how to get a hold of your email and phone number, how they would go to find you.
Well, I tell you what, the easiest way is simply to go online and go to our website, ussa.edu. Everything that you would need to know about the structure of our programs, how they are delivered, how to apply, how to find financial aid. All of your questions can be answered there. And while you're at it, check out our alumni page. If you want to see what our graduates are doing, the proof is in the pudding. Go and take a look at that.
They're successful. We thank you for being with us today, and we're going to do some more shows on the Sports Academy. God bless you. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.